Okay, so we're gonna start. Uh, this is session two of Schulich Ignite Scorch. Uh, for those that missed the first session, what we basically covered was the basic concepts of HTML, talking about the tags, the anchors. The key components we went over were really the headers, the paragraph tags, the link tags, and the container tags. Uh, Furthermore, we also covered some CSS and some like really standard level CSS that's applied to the HTML components, as HTML itself is just like the bare bones of a web page where it only displays context and details, nothing else. Whereas the CSS provides like a descriptive, not descriptive, a better representation of the information shown on the web page. I'm trying to submit a session one exercise. The form says to choose your mentor, but there's only two names on there. Uh, Peter, do you know anything about the forms?
I'll talk with the forms guy after.
All right. Yeah, so there's your answer for that. Um, so looking at the session for this one, we're going to be covering over more in-depth levels of CSS, more like as in what type of uh reactions can occur, making it a bit more dynamic essentially. So that way it's not just all set in stone when you load a page, because there are some websites that you see that when you do move your mouse around, certain effects happen. If you try switching up pages or anything, then some other attributes are shown, different I guess aesthetics, colors and whatnot are shown. So here's an overview of what we're going to be covering. The pseudo selectors, media queries, and the display types, as well as looking at design systems and making CSS easier for ourselves. Again, you can find all the websites that you need on the Schulich Ignite website, as well as all the exercise files and end of session files on the GitHub. So as a refresher, HTML, it is essentially the structure and content of a web page where you see just the bare bones of the information and data, not data, information that you'll see. Again, you'll have your start tag and end tag. There's going to be inner content that you can add in. Typically, you find inner content within container tags, and attributes just provides more information or more properties to certain tags. CSS again is just basically defining the color, size, and other components that we have yet to cover in today's session. So, quick question on top hat. What will be the result from the corresponding code? It seems there's some difficulties with the top hats. Peter, anything about it? Okay, you have to join with your UFC.
Yeah, so when you join Top Hat, you have to select the school as ESC, and then the code is just right there. Hold on. We can start over. Oh, you already did? Then you put in the code. Once you have EFC, then you put in the code, and you should be able to join the class. Martin, are you able to? Okay,
I'm
nice.
still trying right now.
Okay. We'll just give 2 minutes, I guess. Hold on. So, Sophia, you put in UFC as your school, as the school, yes, and you put in the right code. Okay. I can help you later. I don't. I think that's something else. Yeah, just stay behind, and then I can help you. Okay, but we're gonna move on, I think. So I'm gonna start the question now. Okay. Okay, we are done. The answer is C. And the reason why is that because uh there is a style tag referring to the paragraph and H1 that both colors hello and world to be red. And big just makes a width 100% of the screen and the height 55 VH, which is another measurement. Um, dot dark, which refers to class equals dark, which makes the background color black. But it doesn't apply to Hello World, which is why it didn't change the background. And as you can see, the arrow, or no, the bigger or less than sign refers to if this is H1 or if this is a paragraph, then we're gonna color it white, the text color.
All right, question two. What happens for when you see the following code is applied?
the question is over. And the answer is B, because if you see the body tag, there is an inline CSS, just makes everything black. And for P dark, it changes the background color to white and the color to red, which changes the bonjour word.
Okay, I can show an deeper example for this. If we swap to the VS Code here, if I just comment out this section here, one other note, if you are using VS Code, for the HTML files, what you can do is install an extension. I believe it's called Live Server.
Wait, it was meant enhance. What is it called?
Oh, sorry.
Enlarge about.
Live Server by Rich Wickaday. What it essentially allows you is to run your code on real time. So whenever you make any changes or updates to your HTML code, it'll reflect on your desired browser. That way, you don't have to constantly reopen your files every time you make a change to your HTML file. So looking back on this, Live Server doesn't run my code, it just downloads my code as a PDF file. Interesting. Uh, did you get the live server from Wickaday?
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, I think if you click go live at the bottom, that might work.
Oh, yes. If you press go live, then it'll show you, or so here it'll show your PDF files. However, if you select the main one, suppose I'm on my example underscore 2.html, and then I press go live here, then it'll display the contents of the HTML page right here, as you can see. So this one was referring back to question one, I believe, where you have hello world here in red, and then in the black portion, it's the Monday bonjour. Uh, and then for question two, as you can see here, you have hello world and Monday bonjour as such. So the first exercise that you can see here is you're given a web page right here, and what your goal is to add this specific background color given in hex value, and then make sure that all of the fonts uh sans serif except the unordered lists, which is going to be set to cursive. We can give about 10 minutes for this exercise.
Yo, Uzman, I'm gonna hello, hello. I'm gonna
Yeah,
join one of the
hello?
groups.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yo, are you muted?
Okay, so um now we'll be looking at advanced CSS. So the first section we're going to look at is the pseudo selectors, where it's basically applying like a special state for an element. So in this example here, you can see for the anchor tag here, they have applied a hover effect so that when you hover over the given anchor tag, it'll turn into green. So in this case, they implemented to the link, which it typically is used. And so as you can see, by moving the cursor over the text turns into green. And then there's a list that you can find by checking the link here of other pseudo selectors. Media queries are especially important in helping with page layouts, especially when you're dealing with uh, dynamic layouts when you're trying to consider making designs for different screen sizes, since laptops, monitors all come in different screen sizes, as well as your phone, which is going to be probably your smallest screen size. So having your website be able to be accessed on all different like devices is something that's going to make it really useful and easy to access. And so the media queries here are going to be especially useful for that. The first one we'll be looking at is max width, where if you have the at media and then max width of 600 pixels and you add some conditional CSS here, whatever your max width is, once it reaches past that point, it's gonna change into another component. And then you can have multiple max widths applied on top of each other. That way, uh, there's like a certain level of priority of which effect is going to be applied. So in the condition, if you're less than 200, then you have this media query applied. But once you pass the 300 threshold and you're just before 768, this will be applied. And then similar situation with the 900 pixels up here. Min width is essentially the opposite function of max width, where you need to have a minimum width to have something applied. Otherwise, it's going to resort to the default value. And again, here they've applied the similar concept here. So when you have a minimum width of 900, then you have a specific font size set here. But suppose you go less than that, down to 800, and then this won't be applied anymore, but this will be. And then the same situation with the 300 pixels at the top. To see this in action, if you look over here, we have right here the media queries applied here for the screen. And so, since this is still currently running, you can see here currently the max width effect. This current CSS is going to be in effect, whereas the min width, you have a much larger in effect. If you do inspect element down here, then you'll get to see the entirety of the web page and its contents as well. This is especially useful for when you want to see how your CSS and content is displayed throughout the web page, especially since it highlights various components. Here you can also manipulate your screen size. So as you can see by decreasing it, and at this point it's swapped. Now this text is much bigger than this one. And if I go past the 600 threshold, you can see that it changed instantly. Now this text is smaller than this one here. There's also the print media query where you can print out essentially the page on how it's being viewed. For this case, it's going to be printing up the typical, what is it, style that you want on the page. And then your print example here is that suppose you have some content set up here when you're printing the page. The specific content that you've chosen to print will be printed in such a manner as shown here. The screen condition is when you're targeting for the screen page, and essentially this is how they're gonna see your website when you first join it on the default screen size. If you did see in the code, I had mentioned the screen property as well as the max and min width. That's typically combined together to help with the dynamic page layouts and changing up the sizes of how the content is shown. So in this exercise, you will be implementing a similar function as shown in the previous slides with your basic HTML. Layout, we'll spend about 10 minutes for this exercise.
Sorry, 1 second.
So we're just gonna wait for everybody to come back to the main session. Okay, so looking at the display, this is another section that helps with formatting the layout of your website, knowing how you want to display the content in what manner. So there's mainly two ways of doing it. It's either having them next to each other or having them appear on new lines. So the first method is with a block display, where essentially you have each content essentially in its own area section, and then it won't be like conjoined with the other text that you have. In this example, you have two header one tags here. Both implement the style display set to block. However, both of the texts are not beside each other, they're one over each other. And in terms of how they appear in your HTML file, it occurs in chronological order from top to bottom. For most cases, unless you apply like certain features that change such order. Uh, but in this case here, Hello World would show up first and the Monde Bonjour shows next. The next display type is inline, where essentially we have the text up here on the same line in the same block, essentially inline. And so here it's the same format, layout of the code, except all we changed was the block to inline. And now we have an inline block. So this essentially looks very similar to your inline display. However, because of the block component added, you can now manipulate the width and the height of the particular block. So they'll still appear beside each other, but it's possible for your hello world to have some like extra space in it and then your monde bonjour to show up with like applying proper uh display alignment properties. For this exercise, you can look at the code provided here and see how you can format it to look like the page given here. Uh, I think we'll spend about 5 minutes for this one. Okay, so the next thing we can look at is the grid. And you can look at the CSS grids by clicking on the link from the slides. Uh, since we've now looked at a bunch of CSS, now what can we do? So the issue that occurs is typically the blank canvas problem, where now that you have a blank canvas, what can you do since there's quite literally anything that you can do. However, you have some constraints set up because you need to have at least some idea of what you want to do, how you want to display it, and how you're going to implement it. And so there are solutions that we can do to figure this out. There's the design systems which help out give the rules of how you want to implement the CSS. And usually designers can help provide what the web page should look like and get an idea of how you can implement it. To help make it smaller, the issue, we can do a component model that's been around for the web development for like quite a while. Uh, Typically the main idea is that we can set up different components on the web page and then figure out how we can implement them without worrying about the entire web page at once or the entire website for that matter. And so then you just plug and play to see how they're going to be affected when you do try them out, especially when you're looking at different screen sizes again for different devices, how you can implement it. So in the case, a component in this case is supposed to be the set of HTML and CSS that are designed to work in hand with one another for a specific purpose. And so that can range from having a section one, two, and three. And then within each section, you can have subsections where you have to implement this feature and this feature, see how they interact with one another, and so forth. But again, it's always taking one step at a time and not trying to do all of it at once. So in this example, what we have here is essentially raw HTML because it's just the text and nothing else, where it's only information, right? And so the information's useful, but the way it's formatted is gonna make you bored. It's gonna take you time to figure out what you want to find, and then if you refresh the page, you're gonna have to keep on searching up for more, or you would have to refine the answers that you had by scrolling over and over. So one example that you can implement is accordions. This is very useful for components that have a lot of text and you just want to condense it down so that it's not on the web page all the time. Rather, when the user wants to check it, then you can click on the accordion and then the information will drop down when needed. So as you can see in this result, you have the before where it's just all text, and then you have the after where you have the accordions applied, helping making the text much more manageable and easier to figure out what you want to check for. Accordions in different websites have them implemented in different manners, such as the UFC website itself has an accordion setup and not just all information displayed. And as you can see, the UFC website does look nice with this implementation. There's an example here and here as well of how they can apply it. If you look at here, you have type hint to click on it, expands, and then this is essentially accordion where you can now check the information about it. So rather all of the information showing up at once, like this alone already has quite a bit of information, right? Now suppose each of these all had the same situation, then it'd be a lot of scrolling to do. But in this case, because of the accordions, you can figure out what information you want when you need it. Other advantages of the components, it helps fix bugs on all of the uses of your component. It's not but one by one. They're definitely reusable code snippets that you can use in a project without having to use the CSS every single time or having to recreate the CSS every single time. Helps with the configuration and reduces the amount of code you need to send because your CSS is now being designed to be used wherever it can be on the web page and not just for one component. So the way this works in code is that you got this semantically implementation and class-based implementation. Semantic is essentially built into the HTML, since HTML has each HTML component has their own behavior. Each of them are able to operate in a certain manner, such as in this condition, you can see you have details open and accordion. So when you click on it, it pops off. There's Pico CSS is another popular CSS system with tons of features built into it. You can check this out as well. Class-based is a system where it helps define the components, how they work. So you can have multiple divs within a container, and each component is supposed to work differently. Again, there's going to be more implementation in this shown in other sessions. And some of the issues is that with class-based, a lot of the code becomes much longer. And because of that, it might be hard to read, but this typically allows for more features to be uh, included. So here's basically a simple list of the pros and cons that you can find on the slides. So if we now try to build our own class-based CSS component, we could start by making components and then copying pasting them to see what needs to be applied where. Make sure that the configuration are set in different classes. So we don't want to make all the H2s bigger. We might not want to make like every single component behave in the same manner. You can add a big text class when you need it to be a big text. Uh, Try designing them so that it's as little code as possible that's implemented. So that means making sure you use the CSS properly and not making it redundant. So you have an example here of a website with pictures on the side with text to the side, and then you can have a specific component shown here. Uh, you can start with the name and with the plan, figure out is it going to be like. As you saw in the previous slide, it was a combination of an image and text, and it was split 50-50, and you had to have the image on the left side or on the right side, depends on how you want it, but just make sure it's alternating each time, and it's the opposite of whatever you had applied before. Um, this is like the general structure that you have here. So you have the outer container, and within this, you have one container and another container with image and content. And so this is what you have by default. And then you can set it up by implementing the various CSS components. You have aligned image, you can do aligned image, and within that class, you can access the div components and have them have a flex similar with the aligned image here, and then the image class. So class within class, you have this CSS component applied here, and the same thing applied here. And then with the content, you can set it up so that with the aligned image, you have the content component specifically with CSS applied here. And the same is applied for the other conditions as well for the P tag and the H2 tag for everything within the content class. And you can make even more improvements by applying various CSS components to the entire div that's provided with the aligned image, and then by accessing the specific image component. Uh, we don't have to worry about this exercise. If you want to, you can try attempting it, but there's a bit more content we will have to still cover right now. Composing components, you can set up your components in such a manner such as this, where you have image above, text below, and then within its own component, surrounded by other similar components, such as the right here, three card row component. And so here's the general layout or skeleton of the code, where they have a div applied here and the div here. So this is the first card, this is the second card, and this is the third card applied here. Even then, when you're applying CSS components, it isn't always easy. Like everyone Googles CSS because it's been around for like years, so it's better to save time checking how you can implement something rather than trying to figure out all on your own and just being stuck. And an example here for the Ignite website, the CSS already takes up like thousands and thousands lines of code here. So you can already tell when you're implementing like a full-on website, it's going to be kind of difficult. So there are CSS frameworks that do support us when developing these websites. The frameworks are typically a design system for you, and it helps you create your web page following a systematic format of CSS without doing it completely by scratch. So next time we'll be looking at the Bootstrap CSS framework used by like tons of developers and creating sites, making it less of a hassle rather than trying to make it from scratch completely. And so for the end of session exercise, you can find it on the GitHub under session 2. So what you're going to be doing is create a new page for a company called Canvas, which essentially is a product that lets you paint on a tablet, making it feel like a real canvas. And so there's some content already available, but you can create your own fake content on there if you wish. You can create the landing page for the company using the Pico CSS mentioned earlier. And so here you should be able to link other pages that you want. You can sign up for the newsletter. Doesn't need to work, and a testimonial when you're creating it. And that was for level 1. For level 2, you can now set up a thing where you can create a contact page with a frequently asked and a contact form. The form doesn't have to work fully. It just has to be, I guess, just implemented. So there's the example of how you can implement it, as well as a fake contact info, phone number, email, etc. So that's level 2. Level 3 is essentially the page which provides information about the canvas, as well as any stock images. You can modify to however you would like, and you can use like a fake release date and price for the products that you make. So that would be the end of session 2. Essentially, what we primarily covered was the various CSS styling components, especially how we could make the web pages much more dynamic, making it much more unique and better than like the base level CSS components that we learned from last session. Being able to modify color, size, text styles, font, just the visual appeal of being able to modify it while using it is like a very useful thing for making a website look appealing and beneficial for others as well, because it won't be just plain and boring or like a simple style all the time. Uh,
But I just want to chime in. The assignment is optional, and but it will affect the tier of certificate that you get. So if you want the higher tier certificate, you can do the assignment. If you don't want it and you just want to sit through class, that's fine as well.
uh, One question I got here was for the end of session exercise, we can choose whichever level we want to do. We don't need to do all of 3. You're
No.
right. You don't need to do all 3. You can just choose whatever level you want to start with. Typically, the end of session exercises are formatted so that to do level 2, it typically builds on the stuff that you would have done for level 1. And for level 3, it's essentially building on steps on level 1 and 2. So again, you can choose whichever level you want. You don't have to do all 3.
Uh, what are the tiers, or is it not yet established? The tiers.
Fillmore, do you wanna chime in?
We'll try to discuss more details in the next session. We'll create the slides kind of detailing what the requirements are.
And also for like getting, I saw like a leaderboard for getting like first place or whatever, like second place, third place. There's like a prize or yeah.
Yep, there is prize associated with Ignite points. Uh, did we ever de release details on that? I forget.
Um, all you gotta know is that the higher place you get, the more or the better prize you get.
Yeah.
And the prizes are mysterious. Or no, it's being kept secret right now.
We can put
Okay.
it that
Yeah.
way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, if you guys want to leave, you can leave. If you guys want to stay and ask questions, that's fine as well.
Also, each level of the end of session exercises gives a different amount of points, with level 3 providing the highest by default. However, you can't do all three and then expect to get points for all three of them. Once you do the level 3 of the end of session exercise, then you'll just be at capped for how many points you can get. I don't believe we don't you have to hand in last session's exercise since there was a hiccup with last session. Yeah.
Can I ask a que
If you did all three, that's fine. We'll just take the hardest one and we'll give you points for that.
Hello?
Yeah.
Could I ask a question about like I couldn't figure out how to do the CS variables. Um let me see it. Let me try to share a screenshot maybe.
I think you can finish it.
Okay, I'll screenshot it then. Okay.
Can you? No.
I'll send a request.
Send a request.
Next, because you're presenting right now.
Yeah, let me just stop and allow. Are you able to share now?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. So yeah. I didn't really understood what like how to come up with the solution of like I don't know how the what do you call it the
So
dot
in
root plays into this. I tried to
so
just
the dot root essentially is like the base foundation of a CSS section essentially. So you usually declare all your variables within the root section of the style component or CSS file. And then when you're trying to implement them into the other CSS components, you directly mention it by giving the identifier of what CSS property you want to apply, and then using var and then brackets the name of the variable that you applied in the root section.
like this.
So in this
It'd be
condition, like your body color would be set to whatever the variable of button color was, your border color. And for background color, again, same thing, it'd be set to whatever the button color variable is. So I would think that would be red for the first two, or yeah. And then for the color var or the color component, you have variable set to the button text color, which was the hex value you've given in root.
okay. I think I know how to go about fixing from here.
Okay.
I'll stop. All right. Thank you. I'm gonna head out now.
All right.
Okay. Yeah.
Bye.
Nice. Mentors day, mentees, it would be nice if you can leave. Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I signed up with using for Top Hat using the Calgary University, and it still says course not found.
Uh, I,
Um,
I think someone used another email, right? Could you try using just like a different email?
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, no problem.
I think that's everyone. I think there's just the mentors left in here now.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I kind of